anybody was. They were always anonymised. They were IDs.
Well, I think what's fantastic is the CEO of BBVA has made the statement
that was the householding component of it.
Company.
But you think of where that's gone and where it's going to, and the work that we've done with it. I get very excited by the fact that
You're referring to the
no particular reason at all, apart from having an interest in very disaggregated data, I've accidentally ended up in a field that's turned out to be rather sexy.
So that is, he's
and for those of you who don't know, the Harvard Business Review back in October, we've all got this, I'm sure,
we're working with Santander
ripped out,
I mean, they've just hired
rated as the sexiest industry for this century,
they're
which, for pretty much a field full of geeks, was something that was quite taken. The reason I mentioned that just as part of my 3 minutes of kicking that off is this field and the data that we've seen and where we see it going from and where we're going to is fascinating. And every day we have a fascinating moment for economists like myself to be able to sit there and influence human behaviour and see new parts from what we didn't see before. I think that's what's interesting from us, is putting the customer at the centre of that data that you see and understanding how you can make their lives better and influence and change their shopping behaviour in a positive way is something that's quite exciting. So it's an interesting time, particularly with the volumes of the data that we're seeing, with the shortage of people to be able to do this. As I was mentioning, I've just moved to the UK. The last 3 years I've spent in Delhi. 3 of the most fantastic years of my life, to be honest, and I still have the team in India reporting through to me. We went to India 9 years ago simply because we predicted that we would run out of analysts in the West. We did that before the GFC.
But that's unfortunate.
So Dunhumpy knew this day would come, that there were no analysts. We sat there and thought to ourselves, where can we find people with good business knowledge, yet seem to have a first qualification as engineers?
Toughest job to balance.
And needless to say, we ended up in Delhi and in Gurgaon, in fact, and that has been a great decision for us. And we'll come to one of the challenges is finding the people to do it. And we are very blessed to have made that decision 9 years ago, because you're not going to find the analysts anywhere else apart from India.
The basic principles around financial services, which is
Jeffrey, you want to carry the train of thought forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, I like what you're saying, Rex, that you were doing big data before big data had come along as a term, and I think that's very similar for a company like Thomson Reuters, which has been in business for 150 years. Managing all kinds of content, information, and a huge variety of information. You really talk about the variety of information. When we came together as an organization, Thomson and Reuters, Thomson had an incredible wealth of historical, structured time series content. Reuters was really at the leading edge of incredibly fast delivery of financial market data and a leader in that space. So we had the speed, the velocity, we had the variety with those things coming together. And of course, the world's largest news agency. So we have video, we have text, we have infographics, we have all of that thing, all of those different things going on, which now we talk about the V's of big data. We were doing that for a very long time. But as the two companies came together about 6 or 7 years ago, we realized, what an enormous challenge we had in our hands, because we essentially ended up with lots of different databases, lots of different ways of managing and analyzing the data, and how can we bring it together to create value for our customer? And I think that's a similar challenge that many of the companies we work with now come to us. See, well, we've heard of this big data thing, but actually our challenge is we have very fragmented and siloed business units. The marketing department runs their data this way, the market data department runs their data that way, the compliance department runs their data that way. And as a firm, what we were able to do is, well, look, what did we do 5 years ago? How do we solve this problem of bringing together this hugely variable sets of data, all this information together? And our story is really one around just the governance process to make sure, how do you get value from the technologies you're implementing? It might be a big data technology, it might not be, but you want it to be interoperable. You want to actually solve that business challenge. So it's interesting, you know, we sort of say, you know, we're a 150-year-old fintech company. Because we're a kind of old company, we can't be cool and sexy with fintech, but we like to say that. But what we've discovered is, it's the governance aspect. Of how do you get the value from big data? It's that governance piece. And we talk to clients, and that's what they're interested in, right? How do you actually generate the value from it? How do you manage it accurately? And that's where we have the fourth V, if you like, which we call veracity. How can I trust the information I'm working with? How can I make sure the information I see that I'm feeding to the marketing department is the same information as is going to the compliance department, and those things are actually tied up, and the timing of it and the traceability of that information is the same. So with our kind of trust ethos as a firm, that's how we interact and think about big data and how we try to get value from it.
Yeah.
Srikanth, you want to?
So maybe it's good we get a perspective of some other.
A very long time ago, or so the story goes, there was a mathematician in the court of an Indian king, and he invented this game of chess. And the king was very impressed with this invention. So he told the mathematician, what is the reward that you would like for this? And he said, look, I am a man of simple means and needs.
Why we need
I just need,
fintech disruption.
for this chessboard, just give me 1 grain of rice for the first square of the chessboard, and keep doubling it every day for the next 64 days. So the king was not very impressed. He thought it was not much of an ask, but they started anyway.
When
First day got a grain of rice, second day got 2, and soon it started multiplying. And by the end of 32 days, he already had 100 tons of rice, which is a pretty large number, as you can tell, for the kingdom that represented this at that time.
Well, it's siloed, isn't it? I mean,
I want you to imagine what would have happened if this had continued for another 32 days. Where would they have landed?
People at the top of those silos who...
The number is quite mind-boggling because it's about 500 billion tons.
Even if they do, they don't want to disrupt.
They're hoping 500 years of annual production of rice in today's terms. Now, the important thing here is that this is an exponential trend. And
so this is a question that
we
we
as
get
human
asked quite a
beings
lot.
really struggle to understand anything that's exponential in nature. We just can't even get around understanding compound interest. Right? For us, it's very hard. And if you look at the world of analytics and big data and stuff like that, we have been living an exponential trend all these years, but we have been in the first half of this chessboard. Yes, it's quite interesting. But what is coming up ahead in the second half of this chessboard from day 32 onwards, that is really fascinating. And I believe we're in that zone where we're just moving from the first half to the second half of this chessboard. And if you think about how it is manifesting, right? We are already experiencing a whole lot of analytics as individuals. We are consuming all of this analytics without even recognizing it. I'll give you a very simple example. I was in Turkey 2 months ago, and I was talking to my taxi driver. I was struggling to communicate because I didn't know that Turkish people are not so good in English, and I was struggling. Then suddenly this guy picks up his cell phone, an Android phone, and then talks to it in Turkish, and it's doing a real-time translation to English, and I was talking to him. And obviously there's a tremendous amount of machine learning that was enabling this real-time translation and speech generation as well. But the taxi driver had no idea that he was using AI and machine learning. He just knew that there was an app that could do this for him. Similarly, your status updates on LinkedIn and Facebook, they get more and more meaningful. You feel like clicking all those things because it's actually personalized for you. There's so much machine learning going on there. Or think of the driverless cars, or think of all the stuff that spam filters. I mean, your email is getting smarter every day. The spam is getting, even though the spamsters have gotten much better, your email is getting better. When you search on Google and say, let's say you look for cheap roses, cheap flowers or cheap roses, then you get a certain set of results which are much more driven for you to buy, as opposed to when you say red roses, because then Google understands that you're just looking for flowers, you're not ready to buy. Actually, these engines understand your intent, and there's all of this is going on, but as human beings, we don't really recognize it. So we are beginning to live in that. In fact, last week, there was a Japanese AI machine that
which has
just
been running.
managed
And
to
no one
clear
can shut
the
them down
entrance
because they have
exam
no
for
idea what
university
to do.
level college.
they just
college,
keep-
right? It
That's
couldn't
what we-
clear the
HBCU
University of
is the
Tokyo
same, yeah.
benchmark, which is
they're
very
obviously
high, but
in some
it
nuclear
actually
bunker
scored
somewhere up
above the
north.
national average.
Sheffield.
It actually got 53.5% score in that test, as opposed to 43.4%, which is the national average. So actually, these machines are getting smarter, and they're getting more and more smarter than actually might get smarter than human beings. I mean, Alan Turing was the guy who first defined this sort of test. He said that if you are sitting in one room and you're talking to two people in two different rooms, and let's say one of them is a machine and one of them is a human being, the day machines are smart enough, you will not be able to tell better than random chance which is the human and which is the machine. And if you apply that test today, I think a whole lot of machines have already got there.
That's exactly right.
So,
But the one thing
yes, the world is exploding from an analytics standpoint, and AI is going to take over the world, and soon robots might be our overlords. All of this might happen, but if you look at how our world is currently working, and the companies that all of you represent, how the maturity of analytics in many of those companies, you would see that that reality hasn't really come through consistently. So one way to look at it is how sophisticated is the analytics inside organizations, and second dimension is how institutional it is. And if you think of that, maybe the Google, Amazon, Netflix, those are all in the top right-hand corner of that grid, very institutionalized, run through data through every decision, for every decision, and also very sophisticated. They use AI and machine learning for most of the decisions. But most of the other companies are in some kind of a journey. They're trying to become more sophisticated. They're trying to become, first of all, more departmental, more organizational, and more institutionalized in the way they run analytics. And that's really the journey. And if you think about that journey, there are 5 dimensions. I submit to you, there are 5 dimensions on which these companies are beginning to progress. And I'll quickly walk you through those 5 dimensions in half a minute, and then we can discuss it in more detail. The first dimension is data, because data is the big differentiator. Google, the big event in the AI world 2 weeks ago was when Google open sourced their AI engine called TensorFlow. And it's one way to think about it is, why is Google revealing its crown jewels? But the other thing to think about here is that Google knows that even with those crown jewels, you can really not win against Google, because the real differentiator that Google has is the quality of the data that they possess. Nobody else has anywhere similar to that data. So data, I submit to you, is going to be a big differentiator for companies. Skills are going to get commoditized. I know it's hard to find big data skills right now. Skills are going to be commoditized, but data will not be. Second dimension is analytics becoming more real time. How can your engine or whatever analytics be, can it learn in real time? Can it answer questions in real time? That's the second dimension. Third dimension is sophistication. Yes, AI is taking over the world, and there's a lot of stuff going on that dimension. And fourth, the most critical dimension, in my opinion, is the way analytics gets institutionalized inside the organization. We're working with companies that are hundreds of years old and are struggling to just get a basic sense of how is my business doing, answer that question, and drive a cultural change to make decisions through data. So that's a big dimension of cultural change, of institutionalizing analytics. And finally, it's about making analytics more strategic, because analytics has operated in a way, in a place where, for example, you might do fraud detection, risk management, or marketing effectiveness using analytics. These are good for operational decisions, but for strategic decisions, let's say, should I acquire this company, or how should I think of my pricing strategy to respond to a competitor? These kinds of big decisions have always been working through a lens of gut feel and experience and stuff like that. I think analytics is beginning to play into those areas as well, especially as companies face disruption in their industries. So those are the 5 dimensions I believe analytics is evolving, and I think at least what I'm watching and I'm playing a role in this industry is to help companies make that transition.
Thanks, that's a very interesting set of perspectives. So I picked up 3 things from that set of opening remarks. So one was just to
I think there's
what Shrikant was talking about.
I don't know.
There's a point that I'd like Rex and Shrikant to get into, which is the whole issue of
this
talent.
business of hoovering up a lot of people
Essentially has a position where once you have quality of data, the right algorithms, technology embedded within it, talent becomes irrelevant.
Technology can do a lot
other than the code which is driving it. I mean, it never becomes irrelevant. I think, Rex, your theme
we open
was
instant
really
bank
that,
accounts
that
for one of the
talent is
UK
probably the
banks.
single most important
Yeah, my
factor,
bank account is open
which
in
is
a
going to
minute.
drive quality and
So
sustainability.
the
So
sanction
that's
screen,
one thing
we
that
just
I'd like to
verify,
explore a little bit
we
more.
take the whole
Couple more
thing
points
to
I'll
do the
come to, so let's
KYC.
kick off with that.
One minute, right, in that whatever you're working on today.
we should talk.
commoditized.
We should talk. We should
The
invest in you.
people that are working on what they're
So
working
we have a
on
unique,
today
so to do
will
this,
move
the
on to
difficult
what
thing
they need
is
to do tomorrow,
you have
or
to
pick up
go
what
and
they need
convince
to do
Thomson
today.
Reuters.
Anything I was
that we're gonna
doing
do this. So it took
10
me a
years
year to
ago,
convince Thomson Reuters to
5
give
years
us
ago,
access to
has now been
screening
replaced
system.
by
But the agreement we signed with them
process,
is we will never misuse
basically.
it.
It's
We will
replaced
fix
by
what we want, of
machines.
course.
So
We
it's
will
moved
always
on.
have,
And the talent is a key part for being able to look at the next
So they
thing.
love it.
So let's do as a retailer thing. So we
I think
kicked
there are
off years ago,
old-fashioned
we're looking
virtues
at
which you
club
need to bring into
cards,
fintech
loyalty
companies. And I can
cards,
tell you a lot of these guys
looking at point of sale transactions.
They are not run
The
with
data
sound
now has
principles.
changed. It's clickstream
Bank
data,
collaboration,
it's,
this is a classic area.
movement around stores, it's video analytics. It's a totally different set of data that you're now moving with.
Is treating customer fairly.
But the people that need to analyze that data have a certain set of skills that they've cut their teeth on and have moved forward. So whatever you're working on right now does become commoditized, absolutely. And you need that skill. Secondly, which was related to it, which is the other side of the fence, is you're going to need intelligent people. You know, as you know, a lot of people in our game are brilliant, but they're very left-hand side of the brain people. Getting brilliant, I looked at the term unicorns there, getting brilliant data scientists that can talk to the business in such a way that looks and feels, I'm trying to find the right word for it.
And are reasonable and polite at the same time?
Yes, some of their social skills can be a bit lacking, right? And you know, you don't want to go into any business with two of these people, right? As in, we don't want to have one there and someone to interpret for our data scientists. The economics of that aren't great. But getting that institutionalized process, as we talked about, is a major factor as well. We've worked with retailers all around the world for many years.
That's all well and good. You build out your digital
to get that analytics embedded into a retailer, and many times you've got to hold them out and help them point the tools, because they're going to fall back instinctively to what they know versus the series of complexity that you've brought to things. So your insights and your actionable insights have to be brilliant. They have to be simple. You have to take all this thing that you've got there
when you come to my shop,
turn it into something really, really
served
sharp
up the right content
and really
onto
quick.
the website.
So let me actually frame a very specific question, you know, to Srikanth, taking off from what you said, right? So in the future, 10 years, 20 years, are there
In this sense, it's serving up
5 to 10
content
million very smart data scientists
But the educational
who are
process that all of
shaping
us
what
have to
happens
do
in
as
the
fintech
industry, or
entrepreneurs or
500
investors
super smart scientists
is,
and a bunch of very
I think
smart
the regulators,
worker bees who are
though some of them are
applying
quite
algorithms and
advanced in
technology
the way they
in a very
work, the
structured
Reserve Bank of India, in my opinion, is one of the most advanced fintech
I think,
regulators.
I mean, I sort of agree with what
I've had
Rex said.
you know, close interaction with everyone.
I think there will
in
be,
the RBI
the
for
number
last
of
4
data
years to
scientists
get our
across the world
license.
is only going to
And
increase.
while it's
but
bureaucratic,
I think they will
slow,
be doing very
and
different things
everything else,
than they are doing
you can
right
be
now.
assured
Because
of the
most
fact
of the
that
stuff that
no one's
we are
on the
doing
plate.
today, I mean, today the
buy your way
friction
into
between
anything.
not with the RBI.
Not with the
data
RBI.
and
And the second
eventually
is that
decisions,
everyone
that if you
has
look
a
at that
vision, a
friction
sense
or
of
the
mission,
latency
which is-
of businesses, it's
I don't
just
know how to
very,
put it,
very
it's very
painful.
seductive.
That's
You know, you-
every,
when you
I'm
talk
sure
to
all of
them,
you
they all
experience
have a
that. I mean,
sense of
even to
mission
get
about
something
where
to
to take
take
the
sick,
country to.
you've got to work so
Now
hard.
that's a good part. The bad
And
part
most
is
of the
that
people are
the
actually
other,
employed in
you know,
actually reducing that friction.
banking is
what
only
they
one
do.
of the fintech.
I think those guys
verticals, right? There's
should be out of
insurance,
school,
securities.
and they should be doing something
These
more
guys
useful with
fight.
their
They
time.
don't collaborate. They don't share.
So the second theme that
KYC.
came up, I think, going to what Jeffrey was
You
talking
know,
about,
country
which
like
is
India, which is trying to put in place
all
a digital
been
ID,
honored
there
with
should be a fairly
being in the
simple
most
way of
sexy
saying,
profession
if I do
in
my
the universe,
KYC with
so
you and you are
So in case you didn't know
authorized
that,
by you
please
and
recalibrate
you are
your
authorized by
opinion,
him, then there
panelists.
should be a
But
seamless
you
way
know,
of
going to
sharing
the
it.
question
So
of
if I open a bank account, I should
this
be able
stuff is
to get an
complex,
insurance
and,
policy.
and,
I should
and
be
the
able to
models
open
that
a
are being
demat account
used,
with
the algorithms that
stockbroker,
people are
and I should be
applying in
able
different
to,
contexts
you know,
are
get
not
a
easily
loan or
understood.
whatever
So
it is I need
the
to
vast
do.
majority
But there is no
of business
centralized credit
users
bureau. That is the first thing we need
That's
for
right.
fintech in India to succeed.
typically will not have the
If you
ability
default
to
on a
question
loan, it has to be
the of that.
Somebody has
Then
to
you
pick
get
up
into the
and say,
data.
this guy's on the list of
And I've
default.
seen this multiple
correct.
times.
We
even
don't
in
have
my
that.
shop,
That is the
entrepreneur
principal
in the
crux
analytics space,
of
where you can
online
make wrong
lending.
models
for India.
Because the data is wrong.
And there's so much credit
and
that
it
can be
shows very
unleashed.
powerful insights.
So much.
And it
Because
looks
these guys
very
are
neat.
borrowing from money lenders.
Then you
and
realize
from,
that the data
you
itself
know,
is wrong. So how
at
does one address
18%,
this
at
issue
20%.
of data veracity and
Here's the astonishing statistic.
and also the
Microfinance
completeness
in
of
India
data,
is the
right?
poster
Because you're
boy
not
for
using a ton of data which could be very relevant for arriving at some decisions,
the rates
and
of
that gives you
interest
flawed
are 30%.
conclusions. So
I mean, it's small
around
ticket
the broad theme
borrowing,
of
it's 100
governance and
pounds,
accuracy and
But it is
completeness of
30,
data, how do you see
35%.
that playing
And
out? And
defaults
maybe
are
you
zero.
can kick off, Jeffrey, and then I'll ask Srikanth and Rex to join us.
It's a great question. I think it comes down to, we talked about, you know, the people that you have to have working in this area. They have to understand data. And I think if you put a good process around it, then you're going to, part of it is training those people to be able to explain the gaps and holes and issues that are inherent in doing any data analysis. We have, at Thomson Reuters, we have 6 different data innovation labs around the world. And actually what a lot of them spend their time doing is, to your point, it might be cleaning some data, it might be stitching it together. It's doing work on the data to prepare it. And that's what they end up spending their time doing rather than the clever algorithms, right? But actually what we have asked that team to do now is to really change and to essentially be putting more of the tools in the hands of a larger number of people.
He's been there ever since. He's been there ever since.
The kind of algorithm sits with the R&D team, but the implementation is is really broadened out to people who are creating the information or managing the information in the first place. So they're in a much better position to be experts in that inbound content. So they can tell you what the gaps are, what the holes are, rather than data comes in, goes to a team that's over there somewhere, they generate some, you know, insight based on their lack of understanding and pass it back again. So kind of breaking down that silo of where your kind of, you know, big data science team is, I think it's a problem. People go, well, we need big data, let's go and hire some big data scientists and put them in the room and kind of wait for them to come back with something amazing. And I think that isn't necessarily the right approach, because you end up with exactly the problem you talked about.
Rex, Srikanth, anything you want to add to that?
I think when a great example, one of the things you can do
What's
with
been happening in the last 20 years?
big data, you like to cluster up.
Effective recession,
Apply all these
deflation.
different things. One of the things we always do is there's some form of segmentation.
A certain loss of confidence,
You
national
use
confidence.
all sorts of models to do the clustering up of this group of customers.
Yeah,
this group
that's a
of
funny
customers.
thing, isn't it?
There's
And
no lack
it's
of
cheap money.
Cheap money. There's no lack of
And
money.
when you actually go to actually
just
deliver that
that
and deliver it
partly cultural,
repeatedly,
Japanese,
if you don't have the right people and the right know-how doing that work,
like to get a job
you
and
just
work
pass
in
it
a
to
large
someone and say,
organization.
here's a great tool, you can play with this, you'll be able to do this K-means cluster, you'll be fine. They run off with it, and then they go to run it the next month. They find that it's a completely different set of customers in each of the different groupings. And of course, straight away,
there's nobody
I
incubating
can't
them
use this.
for whatever
It's absolute drivel. Fantastic. I'm going to go back to what I'm doing.
culture at all.
But thank you
But
for
I've got
that
the Mitsuis,
wonderful
the
work that you
Binoses,
just did for
there are
me
a few
that cost
people
me
who do
millions
that,
of
right?
dollars. Get out. And I think that's one of the challenges that, that we have. By the way, that didn't ever happen to us. Just to be clear. But that is what happens, right? If you just leave the tools over to somebody that hasn't worked with it,